General quarters, all hands man your battle stations.
Broadcasting live on WNN 1470 AM, 95.3 FM, iHeartRadio, and the World Wide Web. This is Make America Think Again with your Google Blacklisted host, Tom Trento.
Danger, Will Robinson. Danger. No, Will Robinson. Danger.
This may be a first. I'd have to think seriously whether or not this is a first in my life. I've done a lot of different things in my life. This could be a first. I'm not quite sure. I've done a lot of radio interviews on the road, and we've had our shows on the road. I don't know if I've ever done a show from sitting in a rental car in a parking lot in a hotel where my room isn't ready yet. I don't know if that's ever happened, but that's the situation right now through the advancement and the wonder of technology. I may even be in touch with our studio. I mean, are you guys there? Jay, Mark, are you there? Dick, can you hear me? Midwest Dick, can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah, we can hear you.
On the road, Tom Trento. We hear you.
I was talking to myself for 5 minutes. I have no idea what happened, and I was hailing the wonders of technology.
Yep.
I'll do my opening over again. I'll rewind everything. What I was saying was I've done a lot of stuff in my life and a lot of radio and a lot of radio interviews. This may be a first for even me, sitting in a rental car in a parking lot at the hotel doing a live show. It may be a first, so I don't know. Well, and then I went to you guys. I said, I think we even have a connection with Midwest Dick and J. Mark, and it was dead air. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
You sound great. Somewhere in Florida.
All right. Well, it's been an interesting day, and I think days like this, people need to, and I'll provide an illustration, to increase their determination to get something done. I left, as you know, the east coast of Florida, our studio over in the Palm Beach, West Palm area, and I came over to the west coast. I'm over here in the Sarasota area. I'm the keynote speaker at the Longboat Key Republican Club. They got 120 people, sold out, all this stuff, and we're gonna hit them with our message. Florida's under attack. The red-green axis, the Muslims and the Marxists, have come together to defeat Trump, flip Florida blue, win the presidency, and destroy the country. Pretty simple message. Therefore, we need to mobilize an army for Trump. Go to armyfortrump.com. So that's the message. I'll go through that tonight, but I'm integrating the role of Israel in it as a national security partner and the role of the United States of America, these three entities, Israel, America, and Florida. So I'll do all that tonight. But this trip was a little tough getting going because I left early this morning in order to get to the hotel in time, get booked into a room or into a quiet area, do the radio show. And I like being, and you guys know because you travel with me, I like being early, even at airports where you can sit down. Not like Barry, who wants to be there 10 minutes after the plane leaves. But I like to be there, 3, 4, 5 hours before the plane leaves.
Like 2 days before. Like 2 days ahead of time.
That's an inside joke. So I left early, and I had about an hour and a half extra time. I thought I had an hour and a half of extra time. I'm driving south on I-95 in the rain and the dark. I exit to go onto the Sawgrass going on to 75. As I exit the exit ramp, stop at the red light, and then look, clear the traffic, and take off. Boom! I get rear-ended by some girl hitting my car and sending me flying forward and all of that. I go, I don't believe this. I do not believe this. You know, I was shaken up a little bit, but I'm fine. But I was thinking, there goes my schedule for today. And but I happen to have been rear-ended by the nicest person in the world. She turned out to be a dispatcher for a local police department and called the cops, and we exchanged everything. She took full responsibility, and she hydroplaned. Now, ironically, when I was driving, and I have a little bit of experience with automobiles, I'm driving 75 or so in the rain, and these cars are flying by me. And I'm saying, do these people realize there's an exponential factor called gravity and force? Energy equals mc squared. E equals mc squared. That if you increase the velocity, you increase the mass, and you decrease the stopping time, and you will be a splattered bug all over something. Whenever I teach anybody to drive, I tell them that your mission each day is to come back alive, because everybody out there wants to kill you. And that's true to a certain degree. I said, these cars are crazy. And this very nice person just said, I hydroplaned. I hit the brakes and slid. So in any event, I lost about an hour, got here, and I'm ready to go, man. You guys ready?
Rock and roll.
Absolutely.
Were you filling time, Midwest? Did I hear you filling time?
Yes, we were filling time.
I was going right back to the beginning of. I was filling time. Not too well, but filling.
He's doing a great job.
No,
so Tom,
Midwest. Tell the folks what you do. I mean, Midwest is one of the producers of our show and technicians in the studio. But tell them what you do with Sharia Crime Stoppers. You run another program.
Well, thank you, Tom. We're all one team, one fight. We're all trying to get this message out in time. So we have webinars in the evening, Sharia Crime Stoppers, which is part of the United West. Last night we had just a remarkable news analysis program with Christine Douglas Williams. She's a recurring contributor at Jihad Watch and an editor in Front Page Mag. That'll be posted on United West in a day or so. And tonight we have Sharam Hadian. He's an ex-Muslim Christian pastor, and he's going to give his updates about things are happening so quickly in America and around the world that we feel the need to do news analysis programs as often as we can. And if you think about it, your program every single day, 5 days a week, the radio show, is a news analysis program. So we're modeling ourselves after the radio program and trying to do that in our evening webinars. So, Tom, are you there?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, we got Barry now. Hey, guys in the studio, can you hear me?
Yes.
Dick, are you there? J. Mark, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Tom. Can you hear us?
Yeah, okay. We got you. I'm in Sarasota, and we got Barry Shaw on the line from Israel. Barry, how you doing?
Fine, Tom. Thanks. Good to hear you.
Great. We got an interesting patched-in high-tech system right now, but Barry Shaw is a national security analyst. He'll tell you a little bit about himself in a minute. Dear friend of ours for many years. When we bring our groups over to Israel, Barry participates in briefing our groups on Middle Eastern affairs, on Israeli national security, Israeli politics, and he's an extensive writer, several books to his credit. He's been on our show many, many times. I've asked him to come on today to give us an update, a briefing on the COVID-19 impact in Israel, in the Middle East, and the Israeli elections. What the heck's going on with that? So we're going to take a look at the Middle East today, and then we'll introduce the issue about the volatility in the oil markets yesterday. Now, we want every American to be listening to this very carefully because we have some very dynamic geopolitics going on. Tomorrow, we'll have our dear friend Claire Lopez, retired operations officer with the CIA, giving us an analysis of Iran's economic stability and the necessity of their oil production to keep that country afloat, and what may be happening with Saudi Arabia and Russia and the United States may result in the absolute economic devastation in Iran. That's tomorrow's show. We'll introduce some of it today. But, Barry, tell the folks a little bit about yourself and give us an update on COVID-19 because it has impacted us dramatically, our team that was headed to Israel in May.
Right, I'm going to give you some updated news, statistics, and a serious personal perspective on the coronavirus that may be important for some of your audience. As of just moments ago, the statistics for the Israeli cases of people infected with the virus has jumped to 58. That was from 52 this morning. In other words, in the course of today, it's gone up 10%. Fortunately, so far, we've had no Israeli deaths, although the condition of one 13-year-old man in Jerusalem has worsened. There are tens of thousands in self-imposed quarantine, including many returning from Germany, Italy, China, Egypt, France, Spain, Austria, Switzerland, Japan, and Thailand. The other statistics I want to give you here, let me jump something else. I'll give you a personal perspective that may be important for your audience. And this is one that's not discussed because people are in self-quarantine for 2 weeks. My wife, Tom, happens to be fighting cancer, and she's on a prolonged period of chemotherapy before major surgery. The cancer and the chemo has reduced her immune system. She's weak. Now, our quarantine is not of 2 weeks. It's going to be of about 10 months. But one of the most important things right now, she's fighting the treatment and the cancer. But if she comes into contact with anybody with a cold or a cough or something like that because of her immune system, this could be the thing that kills her and not the cancer. I'm saying this as a warning for anybody in health about you should put yourself in your own personal quarantine away from anybody in the family or friends with colds.
Yeah, that's great information with this crazy virus or not, but it's certainly exacerbated. Your wife is a lovely individual. You guys, I know, are a wonderful couple, and we'll certainly be praying for her complete healing. But you gotta keep her safe. So, you know, as this thing grows, there's going to be a lot of personal stories, I'm sure.
Let me give you some other information that's important for your listeners and viewers. I want to tell you it's important for you as well because Israel so far is third in the world relative to population for testing corona, but we're taking fairly drastic steps. Oh, don't forget our stock market is also plummeted. All right, now, the Israeli government has now enforced a control on people, both Israelis and visitors, flying into Israel as of now. Everybody flying into Israel must immediately go into a self-imposed 2-week quarantine. Tourists and everybody. I know you had a group. I was looking forward to meeting you, Tom, and your group later this year. Now, that was going to be in May, but, you know, who knows what's going to happen by May. But as of now, any of your our audience listening to this, think again, if you're going to fly in Israel, my perspective is that Ben Gurion Airport may be closed by the end of the week. We are actually cutting ourselves off to the world in order, A, to protect people from abroad, but B, also to protect our people. These may sound like drastic steps, but let me give you an example. Had Italy done that about a month ago or 2 months ago, they would not have been infecting people from around the world. And right now, Italy also have put themselves into their own quarantine. I don't know if you heard this, but Italy have told everybody in Italy to go into a self-imposed quarantine for 2 weeks. That's 60 million people. This is because they reacted too slowly and too hesitantly at the beginning. This is part also of the problem of the European open borders strategy, because you can drive from Italy through France to any other country you want with no border controls and everything. So people have been not only cruising to Italy or flying to Italy, you can drive from country to country and take it with you without any borders.
Yeah, the whole concept of the openness of the European Union, which is, a very good concept. It's like we have the United States, a federation of states, and you don't need passport control between states. But then when something like this happens, Barry, let me ask you. First of all, I'll comment on our trip because I've promoted our trip a lot on the air. All of us have at the United West, the Jexit ladies, Siggy Flicker, Ronnie Wexler, our whole team. And regrettably, on a positive side, we had arranged a briefing with Ambassador Friedman to brief us on the deal of the century, prosperity and peace, that whole situation. And all of it was geared toward an election year mission to learn all this stuff, to do a documentary on the expat Israelis and the Israeli perspective on the presidential candidates. Who do Israelis want to be the president of the United States, and for what reasons? We're bringing all of this back and utilizing all this information in the state of Florida to help President Trump get reelected. Well, yesterday, Barry, we had to make a decision, and then when we saw Israel closing the country, we had to cancel our May trip, May 18th through the 29th. We rescheduled it. We have a trip every year. We just rescheduled it to our 2021 trip, which is May 1 through May 12 of 2021. And I've been on the phone with some of our folks. Everybody's tremendously disappointed, but everybody understands that this is very, very serious. But I do have this question for you. Our folks understand the seriousness of it, but there's also a belief here in the States that the Marxist left, the Bernie Sanders and CNN and Biden and all of these people are exploiting this, overstating it. I mean, CNN used to have Russia, Russia, Russia whenever you turn the TV on. Now it's coronavirus, coronavirus, coronavirus. And Donald Trump is not handling the coronavirus. And we found some guy in Du Bois, Louisiana, who personally said Donald Trump is not really handling this right. And they interviewed some guy in the woods somewhere, crazy stuff. So a lot of conservatives in America are saying, is this as serious as it is, or is it just a worse cold that, a flu that kills people? And why is this country of Israel taking such draconian measures to close off their whole country when in 2 weeks, when they open it up again, if they open it up, isn't it just starting all over again, letting sick people in?
Well, I can tell you, I don't know why I in Israel, an outsider, thousands of miles from where you are, have to tell some of your American audience that had the Democrats had been siding with Trump when he and his administration started to take action in January, instead of the Democrats were still going through the impeachment process, they would have noticed that Trump had already started taking steps. In fact, if they had seen some of the tainted, biased media, they were saying at the time that Trump was being overstepping it to detract from the impeachment process. Only recently, now they're saying that he reacted too slowly. They didn't react too slowly at all. They weren't paying attention. Their attention was totally on trying to impeach him. So that perspective is completely wrong.
Okay. Well, what about that makes a lot of sense, and we see that here. But how is and there may not be an answer for this, and then I'll open it up for Midwest and for J. Mark if they have any questions. I usually can see them through the glass, but I can't see 200 miles away across the state of Florida. But how is Israel going to handle in 2 weeks when the visitors are released into Israel proper, clean, I guess a whole new bunch that come in. So everybody every day, how long is that going to go on for?
We don't know, do we? But I want to tell you, let me put it this way. As of the news I picked up just minutes ago, the statistics seem to be falling in Asia, certainly in Japan and in China as well. It seems it's going to take another 3 weeks to 4 weeks before the statistics start falling as we come towards Europe and maybe the Middle East as well. We are taking actions to try and make sure that even the Palestinian Authority take more decisive actions as well. If they don't, we're going to have to close the checkpoints between ourselves and the Palestinian Authority in Gaza because, an outbreak started in Bethlehem, which is under the control not of Israel, but of the Palestinian Authority. And this was caused actually by pilgrims, Christian tourists from both South Korea and Greece who went through Bethlehem and left the virus behind. So they're having problems there, but it seems to have spread from Bethlehem to other parts of that are controlled by the Palestinian Authority, and who know, maybe even Gaza, because you don't get any information from Gaza, where Hamas controls Gaza, not the Palestinian Authority. So the fear here is that if they're not taking adequate steps, they may have a plague over there, which could also leak back into Israel. Don't forget, tens of thousands of Palestinians come from the West Bank and even from the Gaza Strip that people, who are anti-Israel don't mention, come into Israel daily to work. And it may well be that we want to protect ourselves as well as trying to help others. If they don't take adequate measures, we have to close our borders between us and Hamas in the Gaza Strip and us and the Palestinian Authority in what they call the West Bank. And this is also going to leave Jewish towns and villages in Judea and Samaria, which is part of what they call the West Bank, in severe risk and jeopardy, because they're living cheek by jowl with the Palestinian Authority. The last point I want to make on this, Tom, is you've been to Israel several times. You know how small this country is and how closely populated we are, as, for instance, opposed to America with its wide open spaces. So it's more critical that we self-impose quarantines and things like this. It's a matter of life and death in many cases. So far, we haven't had any deaths. But in Italy, I mentioned before, their death rate was 463. And part of that could be blamed on the slowness of the bureaucracy within Italy.
Hi, Barry. Tom Trento here. WNN 1470. It is 11:28 in the morning, ladies and gentlemen. On March 10th, I am sitting in Sarasota, Florida, about 200 miles or so from our studio on the East Coast in Florida. We have J. Mark in the control room with Midwest Dick, and we have our special guest, Barry Shaw, 7,000 miles away, calling in from Israel, giving us an analysis of the way the Israelis are handling this. And it's very, very important from several levels. But a couple of more qualifying questions. And when I say handling this, folks, I'm talking about handling the COVID-19, the coronavirus, this particular strand, how they're trying to protect this tiny country of 7 million Israelis and 6 or 7 million Arabs. And you mentioned earlier, Barry, and I don't think most of the world realizes that it's something like 65,000 Arabs Arabs from the Arab territories outside of Israel proper, though all of it's Israel proper, from Judea, Samaria, Gaza, come into Israel through checkpoints every day because they have proven themselves to not want to blow Israelis up. They come in to do the labor, to do the building and the construction. I think they are something like between 60 and 70% of the workforce doing the physical construction in Israel. Now, Barry, here's a question to you and really all the developed countries. If you're living in one of those S-hole countries where there isn't any development or production, you know, diseases like this may not have as deleterious an effect because there's not much to lose. But when you have an economy in a small country like this where everybody needs to work to keep the country going, and tourism is what, 10, 20, 30% of the economy, how do you keep tourists out for 2 weeks to make sure they're clean, then let them in, and thinking that anybody's even going to come to do that? You got to have a ton of money to come and do that, and you have to have a place because, as I understand it, staying in a hotel for 2 weeks is not sufficiently not sufficient to be considered quarantining yourself. So I'm looking at an article in the Jerusalem Post, Barry, which says that the Histadrut leader says that Israel's on the verge of economic Yom Kippur war. Who's Histadrut and what does all that mean?
Okay. Well, first of all, the head of the Histadrut is one of the leading members of the Blue and White Party. And he's exaggerated. I mean, yes, it's going to hit Israel very badly economically because, as you say, Israel depends on tourism to a large extent. It also needs the lines to every country in the world because we're the startup nation and we have to be in regular contact with the world. We're a very open country. But quite frankly, the personal health and health security of the population comes first. And yes, the Israeli government under Bibi are taking draconian measures to make sure that we get a cap on the spread. And part of that spread is because it's of tourists who have come into the country and brought the plague with them, or Israelis being abroad and come back with the virus. And we don't want to turn it into such an epidemic that we have not just a pandemic, but the majority of the country is suffering from it. A lot of the Israelis, I have to say, are taking very personal, responsible position and really honoring a self-induced isolation. But there have been certain key, and it's been highlighted a number of times here in Israel, where people have know they should have gone into quarantine, but then went around to supermarkets, to shops, even to sporting events and to pubs and things like that, and then went down and then had the virus. And the Israeli authorities had to track down all the places and all the people he'd been to force the people that go into these places into their self-imposed isolation. So one person can infect thousands or even indict thousands to go into a self-induced quarantine so that these people don't find themselves spread into other places. And a lot of events are being cancelled here as we speak. I would suggest to you that you will find that by the weekend there may be no flights and Ben Gurion Airport will close down. What's happening with a lot of stations in various airports of the world where you have El Al staff, security staff, checking passengers in as they arrive in foreign countries and out as they're leaving. These offices are closing down and people, let me put it this way, 1,000 El Al workers are being made redundant as we speak. El Al could be facing bankruptcy. And the senior executive and management have agreed to take a 20% salary cut. Arkia have announced that as of today, they are stopping flying abroad. Israel Air, the other Israeli airline, is probably going to stop flying abroad in the next few days. And you'll probably hear that El Al will not be flying at all by weekend. Now, you can imagine the economic impact on this. But you can't run this virus is going to do more damage to each country's economy that so far, if it has a result, that you're going to have on the health of the population. But having said that, if you don't take these steps, it could be infinitely worse. As we've now seen, for instance, in a close neighbor across the Mediterranean, Italy, which is a small country, 60 million people, and have had already over nearly 500 deaths.
Yeah, this is an amazing situation. What we're doing here in the U.S., Barry, Tom Trento, on the Trento Show on Tuesday, March 10th, with Barry Shaw out of Israel, J. Mark and Midwest Dick in the control room. We're going to go to Midwest Dick in a minute. He's got a question for you, Barry. But it's 11:35, ladies and gentlemen, and we're covering the impact of the coronavirus in Israel and in the Middle East, and it's impacted the United West. We had to yesterday cancel our annual national security tour there. We're extremely disappointed, but we understand it. And right now, Barry, we have 330 million people here. We have, in Florida, we have 3 times the number of people than you have in all of Israel. In China, China's got 3 times the number of people than we have in all of the United States. So relatively speaking, they could lose 500,000 people. Probably they'd like to lose 500,000 old people who are sucking up money that they have to support in their communist regime. But we're doing tremendous amount here, and the president has a key group of people. And one of the things we've all learned, and everybody knows this, wash your hands and all that, but we need to do it. And tonight I'm the keynote speaker, sold out crowd, 120 people. And I'm a warm, friendly guy. I'm an Italian. I hug and shake hands and all of that. I told the organizers tonight, don't let anybody near me. Nobody comes near me. You know, I'll bow. I'll do this. I'll give them a thumbs up. I got too many people in my life in our organization. I don't want to carry anything to anybody. And you don't know, this is the horror. This is the Stephen King, horror story. Like, it would be interesting if you can see this virus in like a green mist going from one person to the other, and that person carries it and gives it to another person. I put my arms down on the car rental counter yesterday, and then I was going to touch my face and say, wait a minute, maybe the person before, you can get crazy with this stuff, but we got to exercise some caution because you're shutting down your whole country. Let me go to a question from Midwest Dick. Then, Barry, I want to get an update on it used to be the main news, your crazy prime minister election that's going on. Is anybody running the country in the midst of one of the greatest crises ever? Midwest Dick, you got a question for Barry Shaw in Israel?
Yes, I do. Barry, by the way, I love...
You're talking to me.
Okay, Barry, by the way, I love the way your accent is wonderful, and it brings to mind how all the world is connected. I want to make a point about just how all the world is connected. Over the last 5 years, we've taken the third world and moved it into Italy. We've moved it into America. So we're moving people who have a 7th century mentality about hygiene and even the way they think about life. We know that in Iran, they're not doing a great job on this virus. In fact, we saw yesterday video of Iranians licking with their tongue the gates of a shrine, because that person, 7th century mentality was if they licked the shrine, they would get the virus and to protect other people in the country. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get to is Israel has people, I think you mentioned it, in the West Bank and Gaza, who you will try to control. You'll try to get them to quarantine. You'll try to get them to cooperate. We have a challenge now that we've got all the third world infecting our countries, whether or not they're sick or not, but their ability to deal with a crisis like this in a uniform way. Israel probably has the strength to mandate support. I don't think Italy knew what it was doing, partially because of all the people who are in Italy from other countries. And to me, it's a warning for America as well. When we blend these people from the 21st century with 7th century people, we put ourselves in jeopardy. And just a comment, how are you going to control how is Israel going to control the people in Israel who are really living under a different worldview and might be part of the problem spreading the virus?
I like the question, and I'll ask you this way. First of all, you're talking about the Iranians being encouraged to lick shrines or whatever, and Israel is the innovative startup nation. Well, God works in mysterious ways. Maybe he's sending a message. I think it's time for the world to isolate Iran rather than Iran to choose whether to isolate themselves or not, because they want to the world in a caliphate. This is the ideal opportunity for President Trump to encourage other leaders to totally isolate Iran until they take more positive measures, as Israel is doing and several others are doing. By the way, I want to just add one thing as a comparison. Israel is working hard to be the first country to come up with a cure for this terrible virus, and I would put my money on it within 1 month. You will probably hear that Israel has come up with some sort of antidote for this virus. That's the difference between tiny Israel with a population of 8 million, a tiny, very overcrowded country these days, and the rest of the world. And this is why we have to protect our people through our borders. And even though we do so, as for instance Tom highlighted, despite the fact that if you listen to the anti-Israel critics, that in fact Israel on a daily basis allows tens of thousands of Palestinian workers, both from the West Bank and from Gaza, to come into Israel to work. And that we offer the Palestinian Ministry of Health any cooperation they need to give them the vaccines or whatever protections we can give them right now to help them. We do not want to have our population falling because Palestinian workers will be still allowed to come through and infect other people. There has to be personal responsibility by the population itself, both here and from our neighbors and from our neighbors' governments.
I got an interesting thing for you. As far as the number one most downloaded movie is one by Gwyneth Paltrow and Matt Damon, okay? And it broke the top 10 list just recently. In 2011, a movie called Contagion, about a virus that comes out of China, spreads across America, becomes a pandemic, and everyone dies. It's pretty funny.
Well, we've got over here. I'll give you some information. The Bar-Ilan University Israel has announced a new technology that could reduce the diagnostic time of the coronavirus to just 15 minutes. In the meantime, they're testing it. Currently, it takes about 2 days to test people of the virus in China. Many people have died while waiting for the results, right? And the inventor of this, Dr. Daniele, is searching for an investor actually to accelerate the development of the coronavirus kit so it could be rapidly introduced into hospitals. It's a device about the size of a homemade coffee machine for rapid diagnosis at the point of care. And also in Israel, the NGO, Israeli scientists are developing the first vaccine against the coronavirus. It's done by an organization, a company called MIGAL, M-I-G-A-L, and the vaccine could achieve safety approval in about 90 days. Well, unfortunately, that's 3 months already. It will be an oral vaccine, making it particularly accessible to the general public. But these things take time. It's got to go through various tests and stages and everything. And then tested on people before we get to this. Is going to take about 3 months. Unfortunately, we haven't got the luxury of 3 months to wait for this. But these things do take time. But I bet you that Israel and America are going to be the two nations leading the world on finding a cure for this horrible infection.
Yeah, Barry, we're seeing reports over here from Iran that it's a complete total pandemic and a nightmare over there. Are you seeing any of those reports over in Gaza or on the northern borders from any other Islamic areas?
I know that there is close cooperation going on now between the Palestinian Ministry of Health and the Israeli Ministry of Health and COGAT, which is the coordination of what's happening over in the territories, because we want to help them, partly because of our own self-protection. And we'll give them every help that we can give them. It's as much as our interest as it is for them. We're not going to be praised for this. You won't hear it from people like Bernie Sanders or Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib, but this is going on daily.
And and areas like Bethlehem and things like that, which are Muslim controlled, there's been a lot of influence with the Israeli forces, or are they kind of taking care of it on their own?
Yeah, and what's happening in the Palestinian Authority, again, if you check on, for instance, Jerusalem Report, you'll find that the Palestinian Authority have been arresting Palestinians for what they call spreading fake news about the coronavirus. They haven't been spreading fake news. They're not being arrested. They're being arrested for telling people what's happening and the fact that the Palestinian Authority isn't doing enough to help them. And they're being arrested. It's almost like you can see Iran in the Palestinian Authority. And I'm talking here about Mahmoud Abbas, our so-called peace partner, and not the mad mullahs of Iran, and not Hamas in Gaza. So you can imagine the irresponsibility of the leaders of these the Palestinian Authority, both in Gaza and in Ramallah. And they need to wake up and take more stringent and to accept and receive all the help that we're offering them on a daily basis.
Well, one other quick
Meanwhile, the numbers are rising there.
A quick comment. We've got an election, primary election today in the United States in certain states. One of them is Michigan. Bernie Sanders is in Michigan campaigning with absolute Jew haters, imams from Iran, and as well as Sunni people. He has wrapped himself around anti-Israel rhetoric all over the state of Michigan. And the point you're making is how important Israel and America are to just world health, world innovation, economics, etc. We have a candidate running absolutely an anti-Israel campaign, and people need to realize how significant it would be going forward if we do not have Donald Trump in the White House ongoing for another 4 years. We're talking about people who absolutely want to destroy Israel. The Democratic candidates, both of them are anti-Israel, and we're talking about just the need for this Israel-America partnership continuing, and it could be in jeopardy depending on what happens in the American election.
Yeah, well, my advice to voters there is stay safe and don't vote. You know, we have a vested interest here in Israel to make sure that Bernie Sanders does not become the next president of the United States. It's going to be bad enough with Joe Biden, but it's going to be infinitely worse, both for America, particularly America, but also for Israel, against this anti-Israel communist who has around him a coterie of, as you quite rightly say, anti-Semites who are actually passionate about taking actual action against Israel to impose it. I've written articles, if you search the website or Facebook or whatever, for my comparison of Bernie Sanders with Jeremy Corbyn in England. I've been beating the drum about this for over a year already. I see in America Bernie Sanders as the American equivalent of Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party. Jeremy Corbyn took over the Labour Party from, would you believe, at that time the Labour Party had a Jewish leader, and within 3 years he had turned it into a political party that has been officially called an institutionally anti-Semitic political party. In fact, there's going to be an investigation going on in America into the anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. And this is only the second time in British history it's happened. The last time it happened was an investigation into a party that was like the right-wing Nazi party of Great Britain. And now it's the Labour Party that Jeremy Corbyn still is the leader on, because they haven't elected a new leader yet. Both Corbyn and Sanders are what you might call old school hardened socialists. In other words, let me put it this way, hardened Marxists. said recently, Sanders, lied that he said his brand of socialism is like the Scandinavian countries. No, it is not. It is based on Marxism, based on Soviet Union Marxism. And he's putting on a pretty face to deceive people. But if he is elected and the gloves come off, God help America. And also, God help Israel. Because one of the things he said he's going to do is that he's going to take some of the aid that the United States gives to Israel and give it to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. He didn't say the Palestinian Authority, who was supposed to be our peace partner, and that's a misnomer as well. He said he was going to give it to Gaza. So he was saying in that statement that he didn't recognize Mahmoud Abbas as the leader of the Palestinian people in Ramallah. He recognizes Hamas in Gaza. That's enough of a clue.
Yeah, no, we're with you, Barry. We understand that Bernie is a Marxist, more than doctrinaire. I mean, he's been called out, and it's looking like at this moment, 11:50 a.m., 50 minutes after 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. We're on that time now, on the 10th of March, with a mini Super Tuesday, or as Joe Biden likes to say, mini Super Thursday, today with Michigan, I think 125 votes, delegates in Michigan. Right now, Biden is predicted to blow him away in the 6 or 7 states, which was unheard of last week before Super Tuesday, a week from today. Joe Biden was dead in the water, and as you know, Barry, because you follow what's going on here in the States, the Democrats, the Clinton Democrats, the Obama, all those people got together. They told little Mayor Petey, get the hell out of here, Mayor. You had fun. Get away. You're not diluting any more Biden votes. They told Klobuchar, whoever you are, whatever you do, we forgot who you do. You're out of here, too. They pressured Warren. She stayed in and messed things up for Bernie. She's out now. So they're propping up, weekend at Biden's, or I should say, Barry, where Biden refers to himself and Obama as the Biden-Bama party, if you heard that one. Biden's most likely going to win. He's better than Bernie for Israel, but that's like saying, which is better to kill you, arsenic or a bullet? They're both fatal. One does it one way, one does it another way. We at the United West, we've taken our national security work, chasing the jihadis and the Marxists, pushed it aside for the next 237 days, and we're working to mobilize 1,000,001 new voters, typically evangelical Christians who aren't voting, who are pro all the policies that Trump are, and who are Zionists, but they simply don't like Donald Trump or for whatever reason. So that's what we're focusing on. So we're going to stay in communication with you for sure. We have Claire Lopez coming on, as I said, tomorrow to deal with the oil markets issue. But in a couple of minutes, I got about 2 or 3 minutes with you left, Barry. Give us a quick update on the crazy election, and we'll have you back next week to spend a little more time on it.
I wanted to give you a lot more information about the Israeli election and the comparison to what's going on in the election over there between what we have on the center left here in Israel and what you have with the Democrats over there. But I want to mention something, because you mentioned Joe Biden. He may be better for Israel than Sanders. Yes, but I want to just take you back, and this may take up my 3 minutes, but I think it's important for you to hear this. In 1982, Joe Biden was a senator from Delaware, and he confronted our prime minister at that time, Menachem Begin, about cutting aid to Israel, right? Now, he may take steps, but you know how Menachem Begin answered Joe Biden, Senator Joe Biden then? He didn't say neatly, I'm sorry, I'll back down. Joe Biden, Menachem Begin said to Joe Biden, don't threaten us with cutting off your aid. It will not work. I am not a Jew with trembling knees. I am a proud Jew with 3,700 years of civilized history. Nobody came to our aid when we were dying in the gas chambers and ovens, and nobody came to our aid when we were striving to create our country. We paid for it. We fought for it. We died for it. We will stand by our principles. We will defend them, and when necessary, we will die for them again, with or without your aid. That was begging to Joe Biden in 1982.
Yeah. We're actually going to do a video expose on that, because that's starting to come out. But you know Biden, and that was a powerful moment in history. And then with Obama, I mean, all the stuff he did with Obama and the Iran deal and all of that. And my comments earlier, better than Bernie, but both are poisonous to Israel. We got to stop them. We got to defeat them. And it may be hard with Trump being blamed for, a failing economy and the coronavirus and whatever else they come up with, they want to blame Trump with.
Tom, I want to remind you. I know what's going to happen. I agree with you. I see that, in fact, the wagons are going around protecting Biden. I think he will be the candidate. And I'll tell you what's going to happen. On the campaign trail, you're going to have Obama with this charisma coming up, and they're going to start, trying to persuade the American voters it's going to be Camelot again. It wasn't Camelot. Should I tell you about President Obama's final act as president in the United Nations Security Council, where he stabbed Israel in the back by not vetoing an anti-Israel resolution as his final act as president, showing his true face against Israel? So what we're going to have is the devil, whichever way it goes. It's either going to be Biden sort of taking the Obama policies, the Obama deep state, and revitalizing it again, and taking that attitude, the anti-Israel attitude, with a smiling face, while they're stabbing yours in the back. Or Bernie Sanders, who is honestly, in his political left-wing ideology, going to take active measures also to punish Israel. But either way, we're strong. And this is why it's important that we do not lose a leader like Benjamin Netanyahu because of the outcome of this current election, which I say, you and I, Tom, are going to be talking about this in the weeks to come. We don't
absolutely.
Have time on this show.
No, we don't make time now, but we want to pick that up next week for sure, because that's our message to our folks here in Florida and around the United States. Israel is our number one national security partner. And Barry, you had briefed us on the cheap. We get off on the cheap with Israel, $3.5 billion a year versus all these other countries, and what Israel does in return. So we'll lay all that out. We'll have you back on next week. But right now, we got to get going. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Trento, your host on the Trento Show. I'm broadcasting inside a car, hot car, by the way, in Sarasota. To the guys back in the studio in South Florida on the East Coast with our dear friend and national security expert, Barry Shaw, coming directly from Israel. Barry, you stay safe. Our prayers for your wife. Anything breaks out there, any kind of news, we're on the air every day, 11 to 12, East Coast time live. Give us a call. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow. Our guest tomorrow, former CIA operations officer Claire Lopez, on the instability of the oil markets and what that means to your pocket and how it's going to affect every one of you. Take care, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.